Hey, amplifiers, when it comes to security, you really need to have a plan because if you haven't noticed, it's kind of getting more complicated and there's a lot more things out there to pay attention to. And if you don't have something that's really helping you keep your accounts secure and your practice safe, then you can have a lot of problems. And our guest today is really an expert when it comes to IT security and really making sure that you can get your practice safe and secure. So I'd like to welcome to Growth Amplifiers, Andrew Lassise from Rush Tech. Welcome, Andrew.
Kenny, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad to have you here and really excited to have you share some common challenges and some potential things that, whether they're CPAs, bookkeepers, or accountants, they have their clients, they need to be aware of. They may not be techie, they may not be interested in learning how to do tech, but they really want to tune in and pay attention to this because this is the needed to know information so that they can make informed decisions.
Yeah. So one of the challenges that we see, and this happens with accountants, CPA firms, bookkeepers, all sizes from solopreneurs to 50 plus firms doing millions a year. The cybersecurity has become a gigantic issue, especially now with COVID, and a lot of people are moving to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you're in an office and say you had an IT company that secured everything, you aren't allowed to go where you aren't allowed to go. But COVID happened. A lot of people did work from home, and it was, well, maybe we'll like TeamViewer, or here's the passwords to everything, and just do whatever you got to do to make it work. And it's kind of like saying, we're locked out of the house. Yeah, all of our valuables are in there, but let's just unlock every single door. And it's so much easier for us to get in and out of our house. But that also means it's a lot easier for other people, the bad actors, the hackers, to get in and out. And it doesn't matter what size you are either. And we hear that a lot of, well, I'm just a solopreneur, this doesn't apply to me. And legally, it does apply to you if you're handling financial information, if you have a P10 and you're doing taxes on a professional basis, these do apply to you. And the biggest thing that we see people saying, well, it doesn't apply to me. Nobody would try to hack me. I've got 50 clients. This doesn't matter. And the way you have to look at it, don't look at it necessarily as, well, I'm just and I'm terrible with fishing analogies, but we'll just, to not upset the fishermen out there, I am just a small fish. People are really interested in hunting big fish like marlin. So since I'm not a marlin, I don't need to worry about ever getting caught because people aren't looking for small fish like me. But the truth is, when these people send out mass emails, or if your information was released in a data breach, even if you're a small fish, you could still get caught in the net that isn't looking for a particular thing. It's just trying to scoop up whatever it can, low-hanging fruit. And if you could send out a blast email and all you have to do is click the button that says select all, and you can hit thousands of people with the click of a button, and if one clicks on it, you're in. So getting over that hurdle of this doesn't apply to me is something that a lot of the smaller firms need to recognize. And then even the bigger firms, they need to recognize, maybe you have an IT person and maybe they're really good. And I like to equate this to an analogy that CPAs and accountants understand, that in your industry, I guarantee you know people that know less than you that seem to be doing really, really well. And as an accountant, they don't know what they're doing. But as a layman, they just say, well, that person's an accountant. Aren't you all the same? And, so having someone specializes in these things, super, super important. And, we can dig a little deeper into that, whatever direction you'd like to take it, Kenny.
I think that's really important to realize because sometimes criminals might actually go for the smaller fish because they're thinking they're probably not going to have their stuff secured. Or
Yeah.
the people who think, hey, I've got this big firm and I'm covered because I've got somebody who does IT and kind of knows cybersecurity. But if they don't get a second
Well,
opinion, they could
how would
be
you
leaving
know,
it open.
right?
Right.
Right. I had a terrible accountant and I didn't know that he was terrible until I had a different accounting firm audit his work. And their response was, did he get in a bad car accident in 2017? Because that's the only story that I can tell myself to justify how bad this is. I mean, like, this would be a case study of what is wrong with this return. And it cost me a ton of money. And I thought he knew what he was doing. I had no reason. I didn't have any way to tell otherwise. I just knew that he knew more than me. And that's how a lot of people handle their IT. If somebody knows more than you, therefore they're the expert.
So if someone is out there and they're thinking, I think I'm secure, what's something that they could do to kind of get like maybe a fresh perspective, or just to make sure that they're covered and they're not leaving themselves vulnerable to some of the biggest hacks and
Yeah,
scams?
the the easiest way is to have a third party that does an audit. Our company does offer it. So if you were to go to rushtechsupport.com or rushtech.online, there's a link to a calendar you could schedule to have this done complimentary.
Oh, wow.
Most IT companies do it as well, but specifically for accountants, because that's what we focus in. There's
Mm,
over 250 pages of cybersecurity law from the AICPA, from the IRS, from the FTC. And so a generalist may not know necessarily every base that needs to be covered. And we've seen times where we go in to do one of these audits, and from an IT perspective, they really know their IT. From a compliance perspective, you're missing a whole bunch of big things that we understand on the IT side. Okay, you didn't put data encryption on this physical desktop because it's physically located in the office behind a locked door. A lot would have to go wrong for this protection to be necessary. But
mhm.
at the same time, on a compliance standpoint, if data encryption of your hard drives is required and your IT company wasn't privy to that, it's something that on the IT side, it's like this causes a lot of tickets, a lot of headaches, but it is something that needs to get done. And knowing those little things, or that, like, for instance, your Wi Fi, it can't be called John's CPA firm. It needs to be ambiguous. So it would need to be called ice cream truck or something that has nothing to do with CPA firm. And so these little things that maybe it's not going to be the end of the world. Although we do see some people say, I don't need antivirus because we're safe. And it's like, really?
But that they can all add up. So maybe the other thing, right? So you can get this audit. So if you haven't gotten an audit, and if you're not certain that you've been checked out by somebody who can really knows the cybersecurity laws, and for accountants and CPAs, then I'd recommend checking that out. And for somebody who says, all right, and now I've got this audit, but I'm kind of getting scared and overwhelmed of all the costs and things that I would have to do in order to implement some of these things. What would someone in that situation? How would you work with someone in that situation to get them up to speed?
So obviously, being in the industry, and
Hmm.
that's the exact person that we work with day in and day out,
Hmm.
I would say hire our company to handle that for you, and then you don't have to figure it out. For the person that's maybe interested in these things and wants to be able to do it themselves, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about it. The IRS released the publication 4557, which is, it's about 26 pages, give or take, of actually pretty good cybersecurity guidelines that most people should be able to follow ish. And it depends on how tech savvy you are, but it's very similar to doing your own taxes. Just because you know it decently doesn't mean that, I mean, for instance, I flip real estate on the side, and I was like, oh, well, I don't need to talk to a CPA or a lawyer about setting this up. Like, we'll just throw up an LLC and call it a day. And my accountant was like, why did you do that? Now you've opened up all these cans of worms. You already have this company. If you had done like a small subsection under the S corp, then and I mean it's way over my head as the IT
Right.
guy. But he was explaining it to me, and I was just thinking, like, I should be taking my own advice with these things, where if I had just asked an expert real quick, I would have avoided all this headache and all these open liabilities that I wasn't aware of, because I'm just a guy that's done it once one way and just figured, because my company was set up as an LLC, and then there's like, a parent LLC, and then we have an 1120S, so it like files as an S corp. Just because that's my situation doesn't mean every company should do that, but for my particular situation is how it is. And it's just like the tech guy giving accounting advice. It's like, well, because I have an accountant and I have a financial planning degree, like I've got a background in this ish. I did an internship with the IRS and the Volunteer Income Tax Assistant Program. So like I know more than other people,
Mm-hmm.
but I also understand how important it is to have an expert that specializes in these things. So to do it yourself, which I don't recommend, but at the same time, there are people that I want to handle this myself. I don't want to spend any money on it, or maybe hobbyists that are excited about these types of things and want to learn it on their own. Publication 4557 from the IRS is a great place to start, at least for a baseline. It's far from everything that's needed and required, but if you were to implement that, if we're just looking at like an 80/20, that's a good place to start.
No, I think at the end of the day, especially with something like security, it's kind of like you don't want to wait until you have the issue, because at that point now you've got a whole bunch more problems to deal with. It's going to take a lot of time. It can cost a lot of money. It could even potentially put you out of business depending on what happened. And and so just to say, hey, look, I'm can work with a team that knows this, that can help assess where I'm currently at, make sure I've got a plan to get me up to speed and secure. So I just remove that problem completely. You don't have to worry about it. Um, that sounds like the way to go. So for those people who are kind of tuning in and want to kind of learn a little bit more about your process, about your company, where can they go and what can they do?
So, as I had mentioned, if you go to rushtechsupport.com or rushtech.online, there's a lot of resources there. There's places where you can schedule to have a certified technician, and all of our technicians and salesmen are certified from the AICPA in
Mhm.
cybersecurity. So it's one of the little pieces that we do to make sure that we are doing everything we can to best serve our customers, who are primarily accountants, bookkeepers, CPAs, enrolled agents, and the whole slew of letters that come at the end of the names. That's primarily who we work with, and so we see a lot of the same issues. Recently, there was an issue with Drake, but once one client had it, and then we add it to our knowledge base, you wouldn't be just the one-off client that had this issue with Drake, because we keep seeing it over and over because a lot of our clients use it. And so being able to focus in on what we're really good at helps us better serve our clients,
Mhm.
because a lot of times with IT stuff, it's like 5 clicks to fix a problem, but it can take hours to discover what those 5 clicks are.
Right.
So, it stinks when you're the first one that brings a problem to like any tech's attention, but the likelihood that we've seen it before, it really, really speeds up. So, getting an audit, it's complimentary. It doesn't cost anything. There's no obligation to do business with us unless you see it being a good value. But it'll at least give you, and even if you have an IT guy, just a second set of eyes. We can do it inconspicuously, so they won't be like, why are you questioning the work that I've done? And we could dumb it down. You could say, I was watching this thing on 60 Minutes about data encryption. How do I check to see if I have that? Because we told them that they don't have it. Like we.
Right. So I highly recommend taking Andrew up on the offer. Now, just like with growth amplifiers and getting maybe a marketing audit to identify some gaps that you may have. Um, it doesn't hurt to get that professional look, to make sure that you're playing every ace, you got yourself set up for success, and you're playing the best game. You're working really hard at putting time and energy into your business so that you can grow it, so that you can build something great. And if you're leaving gaps and not addressing them, you're setting yourself up for vulnerabilities that just are working against you. So connect with a professional like Andrew. Take advantage of the complimentary consultation audit to make sure that you're not leaving any of those gaps there. And then if you need help getting that connected, Rush Tech is a great company that really does specialize in this particular industry. And so that's definitely worth giving a look. They've got amazing reviews, and Andrew's quite a nice person as well. He's really
Aw, your
really
check
really
is in the mail.
really charming. No, I just appreciate your values and how you deal with leadership and integrity and how you approach business. And I can't say that with a lot of IT companies that maybe are really good at knowing IT and tech. They're missing some of those components. Um, it's just like, contractors. You can hire a contractor, and you're like, they could technically do the work, but man, what? It's
Oh
an
man, don't
interesting
get me
profession.
started. Don't get me started. I've got too many horror stories from contractors, but it's a good analogy. And I mean, at the end of the day, we basically are, I mean, it's IT contractors. So, I mean, we're not swinging a hammer, we're clicking a mouse, but it's kind of the same, the same deal. And, it's kind of like, well, you could hire a handyman that can do some basic electrical work. But if you're wiring a whole house, maybe you should use an electrical contractor. And if your whole company depends on it, maybe an IT contractor isn't the worst thing to make sure that, you know, that your data is protected, your client's data is protected, because if you were to give access to somebody that shouldn't have it, and all of your clients just even 1040s, you can commit identity theft with just a simple 1040 with all the information that's on it. So I mean, it is actually very, very important, and not just like a smoke and mirrors, like the IT guy's out to scare you. But there's a there was a firm in New York, and they had a data breach, and then one of their clients was a medical center that had a data breach as a result, and the medical center's patients filed a class action lawsuit against the CPA firm that had the initial breach. So it really can snowball into tons of problems. And, you're legally required to disclose when these things happen. And how excited will your customers be to do business with you? Maybe they'll stick out through this tax season just because it's easier. But then what about the next one when it's not back against the wall? And that's really something you got to take into consideration too, that when nothing happens, there's no problems. But anybody that's been through the nightmare of being hacked, losing everything, data breaches, anyone that's been through it will tell you they would pay any dollar amount to not be in that situation again. And those are usually like the best clients, unfortunately, that have experienced how bad it can be if it goes wrong.
So as you're tuning in now and you're thinking about, just even differentiation and making sure that if you want to get new clients or keep clients you have, and just being able to hang your hat and say, hey, we're actually really secure and we've got that covered. We've played every ace there. It really takes it to the next level. So Andrew, as we're kind of wrapping things up here, do you have a thought or suggestion or something else that you'd like to share as kind of a closing thought?
Closing thought, get a second opinion. It only takes 20, 30 minutes, and you can try to do it yourself, just like your clients try to do taxes on their own. My brother's sister's friend's nephew is in college, and he's getting straight A's in accounting 101. So he's going to do our books. Like you understand how important this is in your industry, and it's the same with ours.
At the very least, if you still have that person doing the IT or something, at least you'll know that you have a big gap there. So it's definitely worth getting the consultation. regardless. So Andrew, thank you for tuning in and kind of aligning us to get some focus on making sure that we're doing things secure and amplified.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Kenny. It's great talking to you.
To show your support, take a moment to amplify this message by sharing it online. To connect with me or gain more business growth insights, visit www.growthamplifiers.com. Thank you for your support.